Marshall knew that when he was younger, he wanted to be a rescue pup. He had heard stories about how his parents always saved lives when they were top fire pups back in the old days. When he met Ryder and the other pups of Paw Patrol, it seemed like a chance to follow in his parents' paws and be a great fire pup as well. Marshall was proud of his accomplishments, but today wasn't one of those days. It was actually one of his really bad klutzy days. Already he broke a farmer apples, caused the mayor to get into an accident, and maybe peed in a bush that was home to an angry wet squirrel. On his way home to the lookout, he felt like a cloud was hanging over his head and ready to pour. I can't do anything right. Seriously, all I've done today is mess everyone's day. Hey, Marshall, cried out Zuma as he turned around and saw him alongside Chase, Sky, and Rocky by a volleyball net. Wanna play some volleyball, dude? He kicked the ball over to Marshall, who stopped and stared at it. As much as he loved to play, he didn't think that his bad luck streak was going to help. I don't know. Come on, said Rocky, shaking his tail. Just pass the ball. Marshall smirked and nodded. Okay. Check this move out. He knocked the ball into the air with his nose and jumped up for a spike. Closing his eyes, he brought his paw down as hard as he could and heard the sound of something crashing, which made his heart sink. Uh-oh. Opening his eyes as he landed, he saw that all four of his friends were wrapped up in the net and hanging in the air. Marshall gave a nervous smile and stepped back as his friends glared at him. Nice spike, muttered Chase before the ball came down and hit him on the head, bringing the four down with a crash. Marshall quickly stopped the ball from leaving the area before turning to the others who were helping each other out. Sorry about that, guys. Want me to help you out? No, they shouted, making him step back. Chase sighed. I think you've done enough for one day, Marshall. Oh, okay, sorry, whispered the Dalmatian, whimpering. The others looked at each other with less angry expressions, but before anyone could do anything, Rubble rushed out of the lookout. Guys! The new Apollo, the Super Pup cartoon is on. This instantly brought a cheer to all the pups and they barked with joy. Each of them made their way towards the lookout, but before Marshall could enter, Rocky stopped him with his paw. "Hey, you made the mess. You got to clean it up." He pointed to the volleyball equipment. Marshall nodded in understanding and rushed towards the mess. He first gathered the poles, deciding to bring them inside first, and took them with his mouth. Just as he was about to turn and put them in the shed, he suddenly found his paw on the volleyball that had rolled over. "Whoa," he shouted, the ball rolling under his feet as he began to spin and roll around. The poles in his mouth were starting to come loose as he tried to gain a sense of balance. He found himself rolling into the living room from the outside door where the other pups were laughing at the cartoon on the big screen. Marshall tried to give off a warning, but he finally lost his balance and fell forward with a big crash. Even worse, the poles flew straight out of his mouth and towards his friends. "Look out!" The pups turned around and gasped before ducking as the pole sailed over them. Marshall sighed in relief upon seeing his friends unhurt, but gasped when the pole smashed into the TV, breaking it and shutting the cartoon off for static. Everyone got up and gasped in horror upon seeing their TV ruined, but then that quickly changed to rage when they glared at Marshall, who was doing his best to look like an invisible mouse. Cowering before his friends, Marshall knew he screwed up big time, and unlike his previous mistakes, this one he couldn't counter with a joke. Sorry," he whimpered. "Sorry?" "Sorry," shouted Chase, growling at the fire pup. "All you ever do is say sorry. You could have hurt us with your clumsy attitude. Even worse, you broke the TV. Can't you do anything right, Marshall?" "Now we'll never see the How Apollo Saves the Day," shouted Rubble, who looked more disappointed than anything. Noon was more of a fan of the super dog than him. He growled, a rare feat for the usually kind and gentle bulldog. "Why can't you just be like the rest of us and not mess things up?" "I don't mean to," muttered Marshall, tears appearing in his eyes. "Doesn't matter. Every day. Every time. You always screw things up. I don't even know why you're in Paw Patrol if all you do is make disasters all the time," screamed Sky, getting the nod of approval from the others. "Seriously dude, this is just not cool," said Zuma, shaking his head before turning away. "Maybe you should go mess someone else's fun," muttered Rocky before following Zuma. The rest follow suit, with the last being Chase, who Marshall couldn't believe was even doing this. They had been best friends since they first met and was the one who Marshall cared about the most. "Chase, do you really see me like that?" "Marshall, sometimes you really are an annoyance," said Chase, shaking his head. That was too much for Marshall. He just started crying and ran out of the lookout as fast as he could. Chase froze when he saw this and was about to call out his name, but stopped and shook his head. Maybe he'll finally stop being so clumsy. Still, a part of Chase wondered if he went too far. Hiding in his doghouse, Marshall never cried as hard as he did in his life until now. Hugging his pillow, he continued to sob into it as felt his heart shattered into pieces. His own friends, the pups he worked and played with for years, hated him. Hearing such awful things his so-called friends had said about him, he could still hear them in his head. Even Chase, who was like a brother to him, called him an annoyance. "They hate me. All of them. And worst of all, they're right." How many times had he been a klutz and ruined their games or fun? How many times did he screw up on a mission? He was a walking disaster, and it was better for everyone if he wasn't around. Removing his head from his tear-soaked pillow, he glanced at a photo of him and his parents, dressed in firefighter gear. Who am I kidding? I'll never be as great as Mom and Dad. I shouldn't even be in Paw Patrol. Marshall stood up and walked outside where he saw Adventure Bay, the town that had been his home for years. He had protected and helped so many people here, but it looked like it was all over now. If my friends don't want me, then maybe I should live somewhere else. Away from Paw Patrol. Someplace they'll never find me. He glanced over towards the nearby snowy mountains and came to a realization. That's it. I'll just live up in the mountains. It's got snow, cute penguins, and I can still help people by finding lost skiers. Plus, Everest and Jake live nearby and they don't hate me. Maybe I can convince them to keep my location a secret from the others. With his mind set, Marshall began packing for his new life. Dog treats. Chew toys. Food and water bowls. Blankets. Winter gear. My pup pack. Looks like I got everything, thought Marshall as he wrapped them all up and put them in his trunk. Marshall, donned in his uniform, got on his fire truck and turned it on. He stopped himself from hitting the gas pedal and turned towards the tower for one last look. The lookout had been such a great place to live, and being part of Paw Patrol were some of the best times of his life. Ryder had been a great owner, and the best big brother ever. Chase was his best friend, and always looked after him. Everyone else was like family to him, and he thought their days as friends would never end. Until now. So long, Paw Patrol, whimpered Marshall before he pressed the gas pedal and quietly left the lookout. Hours had passed since their spat with Marshall, and the other pups were bored out of their minds. They had told Ryder that the TV was broken, and he said he would get a new one. That still meant no Apollo or even Pup Boogie, another thing to be angry at Marshall about. Currently, they were each doing their own thing to stave off the boredom. Rocky was reading a book about Thomas Edison, Rubble and Zuma were napping under a tree, Chase was doing push-ups, and Sky was flicking a rock back and forth. Ugh, so bored. Whined Sky as she rolled onto her stomach and glanced at the sky. It looked like there wasn't going to be any bad weather, so it gave her an idea. I'm going to ask Ryder if I can fly today, she said as she got up and headed to the lookout. "'Kay," said Chase and Rocky, while Zuma and Rubble just snored. While watching Sky leave, Chase stopped doing his push-ups and turned to Rocky. "Hey, Rocky, do you think we were a little harsh on Marshall?" Rocky paused in turning a page before sighing. "Maybe, but can you honestly tell me you haven't always wanted to yell at him for his mistakes?" Chase stayed silent, but his gut was telling him that something was wrong. He got up and stretched his legs. "I'm going to talk to him." He didn't even wait for a response, he just rushed to the other side of the lookout where Marshall's doghouse was. But when he arrived, he grounded to a halt at the sight of nothing. The fire truck was gone, as was Marshall. "Marshall? Marshall?" Chase cried out, but there was no response. Concerned, he taped his communicator tag for Marshall. "Hey, Marshall? You there?" No response. "Marshall?" When he got silence a second time, Chase felt that worry in his gut grows even more. Guess he's still mad at us, or maybe Ryder has him doing something. He quickly called for his owner. Ryder was just about to finish the latest level off his space shooter video game when a call from Chase came in. Pausing, he accepted the message and saw Chase's face on the pup pad. "Hey, Chase. What's up?" "Ryder, sir, have you seen Marshall?" "His truck is missing, and I can't find him," said Chase, looking around in worry. "No, I haven't. I'll call him up and see where he is," answered Ryder as he turned off Chase and called for his fire pup. A few seconds later, he saw Marshall, driving in his truck. "Hello?" asked Marshall, a bit surprised he was being contacted. "Hey, Marshall. Where are you?" "The pups are looking for you," said Ryder. Upon hearing this, Marshall closed his eyes before growling much to Ryder's surprise. "Marshall? I don't care, Tell the other pups I'm done being a bother to them and they don't have to worry about me anymore. If I'm such an annoyance like they said, then I'm better off on my own. I'm done with them and Paw Patrol, answered Marshall, clearing trying to hide a tear dripping down his cheek. Ryder gasped as he held the pad with both hands. Dozens of questions entered Ryder's head, but the first thing to do was to calm Marshall down and get him to explain. Marshall, you can't quit. The team needs you. Look, just come on home and we'll sort this out. Marshall shook his head. Sorry, Ryder, but I made up my mind. I'm a lone pup now. I'm going to miss you. Thank you for taking care of me. Marshall out, for the last time. The communication was cut as Ryder stood there, still in disbelief. He tried calling Marshall again and again, but nothing. Marshall had cut him off. As Ryder tried to think about what to do, Skye came up on the elevator with a smile. Hey, Ryder? I was wondering if I could go flying since it's a great dash. What did you guys say to Marshall? Shouted Ryder, turning around with a furious scolding look. Skye gasped and whimpered upon hearing her owner's angry tone. Answer me, Skye. Now. We were just angry that he messed up the TTTV. And we may have. Skye shivered and felt her ears fatten as Ryder's glare got harsher and harsher. T told him he was a burden to the team and said he screwed up a lot, among other things. Ryder rubbed his temples and did his best to keep calm. Getting too angry right now would not solve anything. He needed to get Marshall home and he needed the rest of the pups to help, even if they were the ones that caused this. Well, I hope you're happy, Skye. Because Marshall decided to run away. Run away, shouted Skye in horror. I didn't think he'd take that bad. It's Marshall. He's always happy. Would you be happy if your best friends called you worthless and insulted you? Breaking your spirit? Asked Ryder. Skye lowered her head in shame and began to cry. Oh, what have we done? Marshall. She shook her head. We have to get him back, Ryder. He's part of our team. And we're gonna get him back, Skye. Ryder pressed the button of all the Paw Patrols. Skye just sat there, praying that Marshall was all right and they could fix their mistake. Oh, Marshall. I'm so sorry. How could we have said those things? Paw Patrol. Look out. Now. The rest of the pups knew something was wrong by the tone of Ryder's voice and the urgency behind it. None the others decided to do their usual call-out and rushed as quickly as they could towards the elevator. On the way, Rubble looked around and asked, Hey, where's Marshall? He's not here, answered Chase as they entered the doors. Even his truck is gone. I hope nothing happened to him. The four reached the elevator and waited. And waited. This is weird, said Zuma, looking around. We're all still standing. Usually, when Marshall's here, we're all on our backs. Yeah, without him it just seems empty, second Rocky. The others just nodded in agreement as the elevator started to move. Getting into their uniforms, they jumped out and lined up next to a downtrodden Skye as Chase stood in attention. Paw Patrol, ready for act, tie-in. Super Spy Chase's voice died down as he and the other pets were met with an angry Ryder. Gulping, Chase finished, Ryder, sir? Ryder, with his arms crossed, stayed silent for a bit before shaking his head. Pups, I'm really disappointed in you. What? Why? They asked, except for Skye. Because I had to find out that you five insulted and bullied Marshall earlier for making a mistake, pointed out Ryder. The others winced as Rocky whispered, we're just angry. Well, I hope you're happy because your angry words have forced Marshall to run away. The four pups gasped as Sky, nearly turning white, pressed his communicator tag. Marshall. Come in, buddy. Please. The others tried their tags as well, but they got nothing. Zuma shook his head. Marshall wouldn't run away. He loves being a Paw Patrol. He loves us. But, we were really hard on him. Muttered Rubble, doing his best not to try. He must think we hate him. What have we done? Whispered Rocky. Chase, to everyone's surprise, turned around and began hitting his paws on the elevator. Stupid. So stupid. How could I have said that to him? I called him an annoyance. An annoyance? What kind of leader I? What kind of friend am I? Chase howled in anger before falling on his haunches and began to tear up. How could I have said those things? Ryder walked up to him and held him, letting the super spy pup cry on his shoulder. As mad as he was at them, he knew that they were just as hurt as he was about Marshall leaving. The others were just as emotional as Chase, and seeing the strongest of them act like this brought the seriousness straight home. Rubble gulped as he wiped the tears from his face. What are we going to do? We don't know where Marshall is. What if we never see him again? Shouted Sky with worry. We have to find him, shouted Rocky, stepping forward, and we have to tell him how much we care about him. We have to say we're sorry. Right you are, Rocky, said Ryder, getting up and grabbing his pad. We need all paws on deck for this one. Each of us will be splitting up to search for Marshall. Zuma, you check the beaches and water. Rubble, check the outskirts of town like Yumi's farm. Rocky and I will check the town. Chase, you and Sky check the forest and mountain area. If any of you see or get a hint of where Marshall is, call us. The pups didn't even bother to shout out their catchphrase, the situation was just too serious. All they could think about was Marshall and his safety. Ryder headed for the pole towards his ATV, while the pups went through the slide and into their respective vehicles.